In this video, I'm going to be doing 50 CAPM practice questions with you. Now, this is just a small sample of practice questions that I have in my CAPM exam simulators. If you want much more practice questions covering all the exam topics, check in the link below. So let's get started. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be presenting 50 questions, and then I'm going to give you an explanation of why this one is right and why this one is wrong. Here's what I recommend for you to do. As I'm going through the questions, what you should be doing is pausing the video. So as soon as you see the question come on the screen, pause the video, read the question, see if you can get it right or wrong, and keep a scoreboard of it. If you can do about 80% on this, I think you're going to be just good for your exam. Now, I do want to point out that 50 questions is not going to cover every single one of the exam objectives. As you know, there's quite a lot in there. But this is going to give you a good understanding of where you are in your studying process. If you can get at least an 80%, you're good on these topics that I'm covering. I do recommend getting the simulator though. All right, again, check on the link below. Let's get started. So once again, I'm going to be doing 50 questions with you. All right, so pause the video once again. As soon as you see the question on the screen, pause the video. It's going to be a long video. I'm going to be breaking this up as I go through it. I can't stand here for this long. So they're going to put it together later on in the end. All right, so let's go and get started in this. So here we go. Practice question number 1. So like how I have the question here on the screen, what you guys should be doing right now is you guys should be pausing the video, read the question, and then answering it. Once again, I started with question 2. I'm not going to say that anymore. All right, here we go, guys. Question number 1. Which stage of Tuckman's group development model is characterized by team members trying to understand their roles, the task at hand, and how to approach the task with each other, with other team members? Storming, Norman, performing, or adjourning. Now, you have to know Tuckman's ladder in this particular question. Answer here is going to be the forming stage, which is going to be C. Why? Because you have to know all 5 phases of Tuckman for your exam. Be sure to know you might have a drag and drop, but you have to put them in order. Who knows? So let's go through them. In the first stage of Tuckman, it's called forming. This is when the team member comes together, learn about their role, what this project is going to be about. Then the next thing they're going to be doing is storming. Now, this is not the answer, but storming, this is when they have disagreements with each other. So once they get to know each other, then they have disagreements with each other. Norman is when they find solutions to those agreements and agree of how to do the particular work. Performing is when they go and do the work. I'm just putting the next because those are not the right answers. This is when they go out and they start doing the actual job, and adjourning, they leave, the job is done. Don't forget for your exam, guys, make sure you know Tuckman's for your exam. Practice question number 2. All right, here's the full question. Which project management framework focuses on continuously improving processes and reducing waste in a production environment? Agile, Lean, Scrum, and Waterfall. Good question. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you know the difference between different Agile methods that are out there. You don't have to be an expert at them, but just know some of the differences with them. Now, the answer here is going to be Lean development. Now, Agile, I know, is the umbrella term that includes Scrum and Lean development, but Lean is a better answer. See, Agile is just a broader umbrella term. Waterfall, this is going to be more of a plan-based approach, predictive approach. This is not going to be looking to just reducing waste in a production environment. This is lean development. In fact, lean development comes from the TPS, the Toyota production system, to reduce waste in manufacturing system. We did cover this in the course. Scrum build things in incremental processes. So the best answer here is going to be lean development. Once again, make sure you know the difference between different Agile methods, such as Safe Agile, Scrum, Extreme Programming, Lean Development, and so on. We covered that in the course itself. Practice question number 3. In which project management approach is the project scope and requirements expected to change throughout the project? Adaptive, predictive, waterfall, Six Sigma. The answer here, guys, is going to be adaptive. Now, why is that? Well, in project management, there's really 2 main things, 2 ways to do it. Number 1, you could do predictive methods. Now, predictive methods works when you know the requirements well. The requirements are not going to be changing on the project, and you're just going to stick to those requirements with a stick plan. So with a standard plan. So this is when you use that project management plan, you go through those 49 processes and you hope to never change the scope. You're hoping. But if you are going to be expecting the requirements to change throughout the project, that is an agile project. For example, like on a Scrum project where the requirements are consistently changing. So A is the best answer on this particular one. Waterfall and predictive is basically the same thing. All right, predictive, waterfall methods, traditional project management. Here's a quick tip. If you get two answers that are basically the same thing, like predictive and waterfall, they're probably not going to be the answer. Six Sigma is not really a project management method. It's more of how do we reduce. It's basically continuous improvement of processes to reduce defect. So that's not more of a quality management thing than a project management thing. All right, next question. Practice question number 4. During a software development project, the software developer asks the business analyst for help. What role can the business analyst play in assisting the developer? Now, keep in mind, guys, you will get questions on business analysts. All right, expect a good percentage of your exam questions to come on BA. Okay, so what role can a BA help with a developer? Define and manage the scope, code the software module, conduct software testing, implement the software in production. Now, understand that a BA is not a technical person. That makes the answer here A. All right? A BA is not going to be a technical person. So a BA is not going to be able to code software, for example. They're not going to be conducting testing or implementing it. These roles here require some kind of a technical skill. A BA doesn't have to be a technical person. A BA predominantly is an analyst. They analyze things. So what they're going to be doing is analyzing requirements that the business needs, ensuring that the requirements get produced or get done correctly on a particular project. So in this one, they can help write the scope statement for the project. They can help gather requirements from the stakeholder to write the scope on that particular project, making A the best answer. All right, next question. A stakeholder introduces a new user story mid-sprint. The product owner deems it critical for the ongoing work. What should be the team's response? Add the story to the current sprint and reestimate. Politely decline and suggest reassessment for the next sprint. Drop a user story from the current sprint and add a new one. Work overtime to accommodate the new user story. Okay, make sure you understand your agile principles. We did cover user story in the course. Let's see here what this is. Answer, the best answer here now, if you know, you have to understand agile principles. The best answer here is going to be B. Here's what. When a sprint starts, nothing should change the sprint. Nothing should be introduced mid-sprint. You shouldn't change team member or change the work. If the product owner adds something, they want to add something, the best thing for the product owner to do is add it to the product backlog and then reprioritize the product backlog, probably putting it at the top so probably it can get done in the next sprint. So the best thing here to do is to decline it and then say, you know what, let's reassess for the next sprint. So they should reprioritize the product backlog. Now, add the story to the current sprint. No, leave, do not change the work. Once a sprint starts, it should not change. Drop a user from don't change. This one is also changing the current sprint. Now, here's a quick tip. If you have any question on your exam where they're like work overtime or stop the work, the mindset is don't do that. All right. Don't have people work overtime. It's unsustainable on any project. Practice question number 6. Which estimating approach utilizes statistical relationship between historical data and other variables, such as square footage and construction, to calculate a cost estimate? Parametric, analogous, bottom-up, and expert judgment. Now you have to know the difference between all the estimation techniques that are out there. Answer here on this one, guys, is going to be a parametric estimate. Now a parametric estimate is more of a mathematical calculation on an estimate. It's generally something times something. It's something like, for example, one line of code takes 1 minute to write. You have a million line of codes. How long does it take to program this software? There's 200 square foot in the room. Each takes 1 minute to paint. How long does it take to paint the room? things like that. That's going to be a parametric estimate, making this the best answer. Analogous estimation is not correct here because analogous estimation is using historical information to actually estimate how long or how much something is going to cost. Now, for example, last time I painted a 200 square foot room, they said it's going to take 2 days. Well, 200 square foot room, how long is it going to take right now? 2 days. Notice they didn't really analyze the work. Bottom up estimation, this one here is when they're going to break down work. So maybe they're going to break down the work, how long it takes per wall. Let's say each wall takes 10 minutes to paint and there's 4 walls. Then you know what? It's going to take 40 minutes. Notice how they took work at the lower level and aggregated up, bottom up. Expert judgment is when you call an expert, one of the best things you can do. Call an expert, subject matter expert, to give you an estimate. Like, for example, asking a painter how long it'll take to paint a room. All right, good practice question. Let's move on to the next one here. Practice question number 7. A high-impact risk event has occurred, and the project manager needs to take immediate corrective action. What document should be referred to determine the planned response for this identified risk? Now, this is going to be a tricky question. Okay, answers: stakeholder management, communication management plan, risk management plan, or the risk register. Answer here, guys, is going to be the risk register. Now, you have to understand a couple of things, okay? When you come with these, when you study your process group practice guide, or your PMBOK, whatever you're studying, you go through my course, I keep telling you guys, these management plans don't really have particular things in them. They're all how-to documents. The listing of all the risk and their corresponding plan response or potential responses is in the risk register. It's not in the risk management plan. The risk management plan is going to tell you how to manage risk. It's going to say how to build that risk register, how to respond to risk, how to implement the responses, how to monitor ongoing risk. But it's not actually going to tell you what the risks are. The risk register will do that. The risk management plan, this is going to say, like I said, how to manage risk. Communication is how do we communicate with stakeholders and how we're going to keep them. Stakeholder management, it should be called engagement plans. This one really does not exist. So the best answer here is going to be D. Practice question number 8. Who typically approves a major scope change on a project? So if you're talking about a major scope change, project coordinator, team member, sponsor, or project manager, this is a straightforward question. You have to know your team roles or your PM roles, or who's playing what role on a project to get this one correct. Answer here is going to be the project sponsor is the one that determines scope changes. Why? Because they're the one that funds the project. Coordinator really has limited decision-making power, but they basically play the role of the PM. The team member will conduct and do the work, not make decisions on when to change the scope. The project manager will manage the team to finish the work. Practice question number 9. A project manager is monitoring the project timeline and notices a pattern of consistent delays in a particular phase. What should be the first step to address the issue? Modify the schedule, ignore the delays, analyze the root cause of the delays, inform the stakeholders about the delay. Then you have to start to develop your project manager mindset, all right, the CAPM mindset. What exactly is that? So the mindset says this: never take an action without analyzing what is the best action. Right? Just don't take an action. Analyze the situation. Analyze the problem first. And if you get that, the answer is pretty straightforward. The answer here is going to be C. Why is that? Well, because before you go out and change the schedule, first of all, this would require a change request. You can't just change the schedule like that. Before you go out and change something, you have to know what change to do, right? You have to understand, what change should I be doing? Ignore the delays. A good project manager never kicks the can down the road. A good project manager just don't ignore things from happening. Inform the stakeholders about the delays. That would be something that you're going to probably do later after you analyze it. Why? Because you see, if you go and you tell your stakeholders, you tell your sponsor, there's been a massive delay on the project, the stakeholder is probably going to ask you, why? And you're probably going to say, I don't know why. I haven't checked it out yet. So what you should be doing, the first thing you should be doing is, why do we have this? Maybe it's vendors are late. Maybe the team members is working below performance. Maybe team members are sick and they're out. Maybe the equipment hasn't shown up yet. There could be many reasons. Analyze it first. Okay, next question, number 10. During a software development project, a critical risk has been identified. Whose responsibility is it to primarily address and manage risk? Sponsor, manager, developer, and user. So this one is pretty straightforward. Notice, what are you doing? Like, what is the role of a sponsor versus a manager, a developer, and users? So obviously here the answer, if you know it well, who's going to be the one analyzing? Who's going to be the one managing the risk? Who's going to be the one identifying the risk? That is going to be the project manager's job. So the project manager is going to be the one who's going to be helping to identify the risk, is going to help to come up with responses to particular risk also. The sponsor is going to be funding the project. The sponsor can do approvals. Developers are going to be the one coding the application. And end users, they're going to be the one using the product at the end. Okay, very good. If you guys are doing, how have you guys done? You've done 10 questions so far. How are you guys doing? All right, hopefully you got all 10, right? Let's keep going. Let's knock out another 10. Question number 11. As the company moves from predictive to agile approach, certain roles, such as project managers, find their responsibilities shifting. How should the organization address concerns related to changing roles? So once again, they're going from predictive to agile approach, right? And people role, especially a project manager, they're changing a lot. Okay. How should you address this? Okay, insist the roles remain unchanged during the agile setting. Offer training and mentoring to help individuals transfer. Reassign individuals to different departments where their roles are still relevant. Ask individuals to figure out their roles within the agile framework. Okay, best answer here, guys, if you know if you follow an agile mindset, all right? An agile mindset is a servant leader. Servant leader, first of all, helps people, mentor people, trains people, work with people. They don't dictate to people. All right. And if you understand that, the answer is pretty straightforward. So first of all, never do nothing. On your exam, if you have a choice where it says you read it and you're like, well, there's no end result here. This doesn't do anything. This just leaves the problem. If the choice is leaving the problem and not doing nothing, that is not the answer. So definitely insist those rules remain unchanged in the agile, because they don't remain unchanged, right? If you just go out, this is technically lying to them. They do change. The PM goes from being more of like a dictator to being a servant leader. Yes, help people, train people, mentor people, become an agile advocate. It's part of it being a servant leader and working on agile projects. Reassign individuals to different departments where their roles are still relevant. No, this is not. This is just moving people away. It's firing people. It's getting rid of people. Work with people. Don't get rid of people. If you see a choice that's like firing someone or getting rid of someone, never the answer. Ask individuals, if you're telling people to figure it out on their own and you just leave the problem alone or you give it to them to fix, never give away your problems. Remember that. You're taking your exam. If one of the choices seems like you're giving away your problem, it's not the answer. Remember that. Okay, question number 12. During sprint planning, what is essential for the team to understand to know what work must be performed to fulfill a user story? Previous sprint retrospective notes, benchmarks, detailed acceptance criteria, the product backlog items for the next sprint. All right, let's go through this, guys. Before the team starts, right? You know, the team starts to do the sprint plan and they're going to say they're going to do all these stories during the sprint. When the team is doing that, you got to ask yourself, okay, how does the team really know what work they're doing is correct? And the answer here is going to be a detailed acceptance criteria. Make sure you understand this term for your exam because you probably will see it. So an acceptance criteria is a set of things that must be done, such as a certain performance level, has to function this way, it has to look this way, it has to produce this result for it to be done, for the customers, for the stakeholders to accept that this product is finished. So that's what a detailed acceptance criteria is all about. Now, you want to understand that this is something that they're going to get as they talk to the end users. Previous sprint retrospective notes, this is going to tell the team what they've done wrong, what they did right, and what they're going to do more of, what they're going to do less of for the current sprint. It really doesn't deal with the work per se. Notice what work must be done. So it's not going to really deal with the work. It's more of the performance of the team members during the sprint. Now, benchmarking was a good answer. Benchmarking is what the team is industry standards that the team can follow in order to make sure their product works well against competitors. For example, how long should a website load? How fast should your phone open up from a thumbprint? How fast should a supercar go? These are all going to be benchmarks. Although that's great, an acceptance criteria would probably include benchmarking, making it a better answer. The product backlog of items for the next sprint. This is just the work. This is just the work that has to get done. This is not what work must be performed to fulfill a user story. That's going to be more of the acceptance criteria. Next question. All right, question number 13. When the sprint team wants to evaluate the amount of work they're completing over several sprints to predict the future performance, what tool should they use? Velocity chart, sprint planning, burn up and burn down chart. Okay, pretty straightforward one. You guys should know what a sprint velocity chart is. Now, a velocity chart basically is a chart that shows you how much points worth of work they have done over different iterations or sprints. So in iteration 1, they did 20 points. Iteration 2, they did 25. Iteration 3, they did 26. Iteration 4, they did 28, and so on. So they're showing you how much. This helps them to estimate how much work they can do in future sprints. Sprint planning is when they determine what work to get done in the next sprint. Burn ups and burn down charts, and I can help you here. Burn up and burn down charts shows how much work they have done so far and how much work is left to be done. Make sure you know burn up and burn down charts for your tests. Practice question number 14. Here we go. A software company is tasked with creating a new application for a client. However, the client is unsure about the specific functionalities they want in the application and expects that there will be changes along the way. Which of the following project delivery approaches should be recommended? So a couple of things here. You notice that it says and expects there will be changes along the way. So more than likely they're talking about scope changes, right? They're unsure about, so they don't know what exactly they want. So if you have a project where things are, quote unquote, changing, you have to adapt to those changes. See where I'm going with this? The answer here is, of course, going to be an adaptive approach. Adaptive approach is another word for agile. Always remember that. Okay, like Scrum, extreme programming, and so on. Waterfall and traditional is the same thing. Waterfall and traditional, this is when the scope will not change. The scope should not change. Like building let's say you have a plan and you're approved and you got all the project plan ready and you build, you're building a 50-story skyscraper and everything is approved. Then changing that is, somebody comes, can you build 60 stories instead? It's not possible because it would require a brand new plan, brand new permits and everything. So a lot of construction projects will follow traditional project management methods. A lot of software projects, your better best bet is going to be agile. But keep in mind, there are software projects that do follow agile projects also. Hybrid is a combination. Hybrid is when certain projects part of it is agile, part of it is traditional. For example, if you're building a large building, designing the building in a CAD software, in some kind of a software where you've designed buildings in, you could do that in agile, right? Iterations. You could, and then when you build the actual physical structure, that can be done using traditional methods. So that's a hybrid. Part of it traditional, part of it agile. Okay, question number 15. What document is primarily concerned with outlining project objectives, deliverables, milestones, and stakeholders? The risk management plan, charter, scope statement, and the stakeholder register. Pretty straightforward. Notice you got objectives, you got deliverables, milestones. So this is going to be a high-level thing, and stakeholders. Now, the answer here is going to be a project charter. First of all, it's not the stakeholder register. The stakeholder register doesn't have deliverables. It doesn't have project objectives. It does have stakeholders, though. The scope statement will have deliverables. It may have some high-level milestones. It's not going to have stakeholders, though. The risk management plan has none of these things. The project charter, though, has high-level objectives, high-level deliverables, high-level milestones, and it has potentially, not all, but some charters do have high-level stakeholders, which is basically going to just be like the sponsors and the project managers. But it does have stakeholders in it, and because it authorizes the project manager. It doesn't have all the stakeholders like the stakeholder register does, but it does have stakeholders, which is the project manager, and of course it should be the project sponsor should be there also. Okay, let's keep going. Quick question. What is a key characteristic of a project? Ongoing, temporary, permanency, or repetitiveness? So this question, you really have to know there is an objective in the CAPM that says operations versus project management. Keep in mind, project management and projects are temporary in nature. Operations is ongoing, repetitive work, all right? Project management is temporary. All projects, definition of a project, PMBOK definition, a temporary endeavor used to create a unique product, service, or result. Notice the word temporary is in there. So one of the characteristics of a project is temporary. Operations work is going to be something that is repetitiveness. It's ongoing. That's going to be all operations. Permanency, there's no permanent work. All right, let's keep on going. Number 17. A tech startup is developing a novel application, but its developers are not clear about the final functionalities and will learn more as they test initial versions with users. What delivery approach is most suitable? All right, so we say they're developing a novel, something very unique. They're not clear about the final. So if they're not clear about the functionalities, which one are we going to go with? Adaptive, because they're not certain about the functionalities. Okay, predictive, because the tech market is stable. Adaptive, because they have experienced developers. Predictive, because they want to finish as soon as possible. The answer here, if you remember from what I told you earlier, remember, if you're using an adaptive approach or an agile approach, it means that the scope is not known. They're not too sure what they want on that particular project. So this is best answer. Predictive, now you can't determine this. The tech market is not stable. All right, first of all. Tech market changes all the time. Adaptive, you can't determine. There's nothing in here that says they have experienced developers. Predictive, because they want to finish as soon as possible. Predictive doesn't mean the project gets finished as soon as possible. Predictive is to finish the scope. Doesn't mean it's going to get finished as soon as possible. Question 18. At the sprint review, stakeholders express that a completed user story doesn't align with their expectations. What should the team do? So keep in mind, sprint review is when the customer review what's wrong with the deliverables or the things that was made during the previous sprint. So let's see what this is. Redo the user stories in a current sprint without the stakeholders' feedback. No, you don't do that. You just don't redo it in a current sprint. You just don't go back to it. The sprint is done. Notice it says at the sprint review. Ignore the feedback as the sprint is already completed. You never ignore users' feedback. Users' feedback is critical to ensuring you build the right product. On this exam, if you get a question that says, if you get a choice that says ignore something, never select it, it's never the answer. Reassess the user story's acceptance criteria and refine it for future sprint. This would be the best answer here because what you're doing is you're basically looking to see what went wrong, and you can then reassess what we did right, what we did wrong, and then what happens is anything that wasn't done in the sprint correctly is added back to the product backlog and then reprioritized to get done in a future sprint. Move on to the next sprint, assuming stakeholders will adjust. No, never assume something. And this really doesn't do anything. Notice I said don't ignore things. Oops. I said don't ignore things. And notice D is also doing that. D also ignores that particular problem. All right, so best answer here was C. Practice question number 19. A construction company has been contracted to build a standard design house. A type of project they have undertaken multiple times in the past with well-established processes and a clearly defined scope. Which of the following project delivery methods should you recommend? Matrix, adaptive, traditional, or hybrid? Now this one here is a pretty straightforward thing. If you remember what I said in the beginning of this video, when you're doing particularly a traditional project, you want to make sure that the scope is well known. A lot of times traditional projects, you've probably done this before. Like building a building is a good example of a traditional project. Matrix is not a project type. This is an organizational structure type, so this doesn't apply here. Adaptive projects is when the scope is not defined, and you probably haven't done this thing before. That would be an adaptive. Hybrid is when you combine the two of them. There's nothing here that says anything here that would make you want to go with any part of it being an agile. Okay, good question. Let's go to number 20. Question number 20. When enhancing the cybersecurity protocols of a company's IT infrastructure, who should the project manager primarily coordinate with to guarantee that the selected cybersecurity solutions are implemented effectively? Business analyst, network administrator, chief information security officer, IT support specialist. So who should you be working with as a project manager to ensure that solutions we're going to be implementing meet the company's requirements? This really sounds like a job, if you guessed it, correct, for a business analyst. That's right. So business analyst works with the project manager. They work with the stakeholders. They work with the customers. They work with the team members to ensure everybody's on the same page. They're going to be analyzing the business, analyzing to see things such as what's required for the business to progress in a new direction, to solve a particular problem. Take advantage of particular opportunities is what they do. They're going to see, well, these cybersecurity solutions meet these business objectives and keep the business flowing. Best answer here is a business analyst. Network administrators will implement and fix and configure things. Chief Information Security Officer, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be setting those high-level security policies, and support specialist supports users. Okay, practice question 21. So far we have done 20 questions. Hopefully you're doing okay. All right, see how you did on the last 20 questions. Practice question 21. When conducting stakeholder analysis as a business analyst, which two elements should be meticulously studied to ensure effective stakeholder management? Choose two. All right, so we got to choose two. Stakeholder power interest grid, technical constraints, communication plan, stakeholder register, and cost estimates. So if you're a business analyst, if you're a BA, and what should you be looking at really well in order to ensure your stakeholders engage or manage well? All right, answer here. Let's see if you guessed it. Pretty straightforward, actually. You should have got this one. The stakeholder power interest grid. And this we covered in the course. The power interest grid basically shows you their influence on the project, how the project impacts them, how are they going to impact the project, sometimes even looking at what roles they can play on a project. The stakeholder register is going to be a listing of all the stakeholders on the project. You can't manage stakeholders if you don't know who your stakeholders are. Technical constraints. This is going to be more of building a project management plan. Communication plan comes after this whole building and understanding your stakeholders. Cost estimates this is going to work with subject matter experts to determine the cost of a project. Practice question 22. A project manager needs to determine if the project will finish within budget based on its current performance. What tool should the project manager use? Okay, which one here is really going to be dealing with costs, right? So you got to understand this. Notice that this question is all about costs, right? So critical path method, not correct. This is about scheduling. Decomposition is about breaking down work. Flowchart is about following a process. It's actually done in quality. We talked about this in quality management, scope management, schedule management, and of course, EVM. Earned value management is what we used, is all those earned value formulas that you're going to need to know for your exam, which we do have coming up soon. Those formulas is what's going to tell you whether you're on budget, you're off budget, how far you are from your budget, what's the forecast of the budget, and so on. So make sure you know your earned value for your exam. You'll see quite a lot of those, especially on this particular test. Practice question number 23. A team utilizing Scrum has just finished their sprint and had shipped the increment to the customer. What event should immediately follow to ensure continuous improvement with the team? Okay, so they finish the sprint, they give the work to the customer to probably get reviewed. What is going to happen next? Sprint planning? Probably not. Sprint planning is when you determine what gets done in the next sprint. There's something you should do at the end of every sprint, which is going to be your retrospective. Your retrospective is when the team sits down after the sprint review and says what they did right, what they did wrong, what are they going to do more of, what are they going to do less of. This is when they look back on the previous sprint to do lesson learned to improve their processes. The daily scrum is what they do every single day. They answer 3 questions: what we did Just yesterday, since the last sprint, what are we going to do today? And is there any impediments? Backlog refinement. This is reprioritizing the backlog or grooming the product backlog to see whether items are still needed. Reprioritizing items. This is generally done by the product owner, any which way, not by the team. All right, hopefully you guys got that one. Practice question number 24. In order to visualize and track the Scrum team's work and identify if any work items are behind schedule during the sprint, what tool should be used? All right, so we're going to need a tool to track work and to see if anything is really behind this schedule here on the sprint. All right, let's go through it. First of all, a velocity chart says how much work is getting done in the sprints. Probably not this one. A Kanban board can keep, it's basically a sign board or task board that shows you how work flows through a particular project. So probably not. Network diagram. Most agile projects don't use network diagrams. But this one is not really going to show it's behind schedule. It just shows you the sequence of work and work that has to get done. So definitely we're going to go with a burn up chart or a burn down chart. You have to know the difference. Now this one in particular is talking about a burn down chart. So a burn down chart represents the work completed. So it's going to show you work that has been done or burned down versus planned works. If you remember with the burn down chart, it shows you work. Remember, the burn down chart goes down like this. You got to refer back to the coursework. And it shows you work as it's getting done. So on this day, how much work was done. On this day, how much work did we finish, or how much work is left. So remember to know your burn up and your burn down charts. Practice question 25. A project manager discovers that a project with a budget at completion of $150,000 is 50% complete, though $80,000 should have been done. Calculate the schedule performance index using earned value management principles. All right, so you have to know your EVM in this particular one. Now, they're going to give you a calculator on the test. You better be prepared to calculate these numbers. Remember, I took the CAPM exam when it came out, and there was quite a lot of these things. Let's knock this out here. Okay, so let's see if we can figure this out. Number one, you have to know the formula for SPI. So SPI is equal to EV divided by PV. So what's EV? Is the earned value. It's the actual percent complete times the BAC. So we know the actual percent. They tell you it's 50% done times the BAC. 50% of 150, hopefully you guys know this, it's basically 150 times 50% of 0.05. So I'm sorry, 0.5. So it would be 75,000. And then we're going to divide this by PV. Now it says those 80,000 should have been done. So it's saying that's like the amount of work that they should have finished. So it's 75,000 divided. This is going to give me my PV there. So 75,000 divided by 80,000 is going to give us 0.94. I think it's like 0.9375, something like that. But it's basically 0.94 if you round it. Okay, once again, make sure to know your EVM formulas for your exam. Next question. Question 26, which of the following estimated method is typically used in the early stages of a project and is based on expert knowledge rather than detailed data? Bottom up, analogous, parametric, and 3 points. So the answer here, notice early stages of the project. That means the work is not known too much. You're basically relying on historical information, people that have done the work. This is a good definition of analogous estimation. Bottom-up estimation generally is not done in the early stages of the project because bottom-up needs detailed work and the breakdown of work to be aggregated. Parametric generally needs good detailed information too. Remember, parametric is a math algorithm of some kind, so it's going to need detailed information. So it's going to be a 3-point estimate. The best one, easiest one that uses historical information, uses expert judgment from similar projects from a while back is going to be analogous estimation. Know the different estimating types for your tests. Practice question number 27. A key stakeholder requests a major change to the project scope that can impact the delivery date. What should the project manager do first? Immediately, implement the change immediately, reject the change, evaluate the impact of the change, inform the team about the change. Now, if you remember in the course, I always tell you guys, when it comes, there's nothing here that says this is an agile project. So we're going to assume that this is a traditional project. When it comes to traditional project, do not implement a change right away. Just don't accept the change. Before anything should be changed, what should you be doing? That's right. You have to evaluate the change. You can see the best answer here. You don't implement changes. It would need a change request. You have to submit a change request and evaluate the change. You, the project manager, probably don't have the ability to reject changes. That's generally going to be done through the project sponsor, but the project sponsor is going to probably have you assess the change first. Never reject changes. Always remember that. On your exam, if you hear something about rejecting a change, never the answer. Unless they say like what not to do. Inform the team about the changes. While this is good, the team is going to help you to evaluate the changes. All right, practice question number 27. Oops, so the explanation shouldn't have done that. Press that too many times. During the sprint review, a stakeholder suggests an essential feature to be added to the product. What should the Scrum team do with the new input? So notice they suggest, hey, they want to add something to a particular product. What are we going to do? Ignore it because the sprint is already planned. Never select an answer with the word ignore it. Add it to the product backlog. Good. Anytime somebody wants a feature in sprint, what do? We put it in the product backlog. It's probably going to be the answer. Implement it immediately in the ongoing sprint. No, because it has to be implemented to the product backlog and it has to be reprioritized by the product owner. Put an X on that one too. Tell the stakeholders that their input is not valid. Never be negative. If you have an answer where there's something like negative, like telling people to work overtime, ignoring people, firing people, those are never the answer on this particular exam. Those are like the throwaway answers. Practice question number 29. Next question. A project manager is beginning a new project and needs a document that will formally recognize the existence of the project and grant permission to use organizational resources. Which document officially recognizes the project, allows the project to allocate additional resources? The work breakdown structure, probably not. The work breakdown structure does not formally recognize the existence of a project. All right, that's the project charter. The project charter is what gives you the recognition of a project in a company. Is what authorizes the project to get started. Is what authorizes the project manager to start the job. The project management plan, this is not that. The project management plan tells you how to execute, monitor, and control the project. It doesn't actually authorize the project. The stakeholder register just gives me a listing of all the stakeholders making the project charter. The best answer in this one. Make sure you know the difference between all the different project documents. Remember, there's 33 documents, 18 components of a PM plan. Make sure you know the difference between all of those things before walking into your exam room. I did cover all of them in the class. Practice question number 30. What method should a business analyst use to effectively collect feedback from a large number of users? So a business analyst is going to gain requirements from a large number of users. What are we going to be doing? Okay, a couple quick things here. Number one, interviewing. All right. I'm not even going to cover this one here because you should know if it's a large number of users, it's not going to be very effective to go and interview all of them. Facilitated workshop means you bring people together to get particular quote unquote work done. Those should be kept small. Prototyping is when you display and you give someone, give people particular things, such as a working piece of software or a particular product, and they use it and give you feedback, but you can't do this to a large amount of users at once. The best thing here is a survey. Think about this. If you have to get feedback from a large number of users, just send out a quick survey to all these people, and then they're going to answer the questions on the survey that you're looking for. So the key word that you had to look for was feedback from a large number of users. Think about if there's a lot of people, is it going to be hard or easy? Practice question number 31. A user experience designer is looking for insights into user needs for a new application. How can the business analyst assist? So how can a business analyst help with this new user here? All right. Create the visuals of the application, help identify and document the needs, develop the front end of the application, perform user testing. Okay. Understand the role of a BA. You have to know the role. So a BA is not really a technical person, although they could be, but generally they're not technical people. So they're not going to create the visual design. Definitely not develop and perform tests. It's definitely the best thing a BA does is to be able to work with the user to elicit. Remember this word, elicitation, to gain, to gather the requirements for the users. Remember for your exam, elicitation goes with the BA. The BA goes out and elicit requirements from users. Remember that for your exam. Anytime you see this word elicitation on your exam, think business analyst, all right? Because if you remember in the course I covered, one of the main process group that they have is elicitation. I should say knowledgeers is elicitation for the BA. Question number 32. Two team members have a disagreement about the priority of two different tasks. Both tasks are critical, but due to limited resources, only one can be tackled. How should this be resolved? Choose the task that seems easier to complete. Toss a coin. Log the conflict to issue log. Continue priority assessment. Ask both teams to work overtime. So this one, you have to know, what do you do when there's a problem? So right now, I want you guys to understand that notice they have a disagreement. So what is this now? This is going to be an issue. That's right. There's a problem going on this particular project. Choose a task that seems easier. You never do that because you don't know which one is right. Toss a coin. You probably should have got that one. You're never going to do that in a project. I'll just toss a coin. That's the right answer. Never ask people, if you remember this thing, never be negative. Never ask people to work overtime. Asking people to work overtime is unsustainable and it's type of a negative thing. Log it. Yes, when there is an issue, the first thing you have to do is put it in the issue log. Okay, prioritize it in the issue log and then work with them. Work with the team member to see what's the best answer here. What's the best solution for it. So the main point of this question is the moment there is a problem, a particular issue on a project, what's the first thing the PM does? Well, add it to the issue log. That's the first thing you're going to be doing. Keep that in mind. Next question, question 33. Here we go. All right. For a project with a BAC of 80,000 and a CPI of 0.9, find the estimated at completion. Oh, right. So you have to know EAC is equal to what? It's equal to, oh boy, I have 3 lines here. I don't want that to be 2, right? Equal is 2. Is equal to the budget. All right, so it's BAC divided by the spend rate, how much you're spending, it's part of a CPI. So in this one here, we have 80,000 divided by 0.9. The answer here is going to be 88,000. Now, if you divide something by a number smaller than 1, it's always going to give you a bigger number. If you divide something generally by 1 and over, it's going to give you a smaller number. So in this particular one, you can see here 88,000 is one of the only ones bigger than that. What does this mean? You know what I forgot to mention previously is for EVM, just don't know the formula. Know what they mean. So what does this mean? So if I tell you your budget at completion was 80,000 and the EAC is 88,000, what does that mean? That means that you originally budgeted your project for 88,000. And based on how you're spending your money right now, the EAC is a forecast that we're forecasting that as of right now, when this project ends, it's going to end not at 80,000, which it should have done, but it's going to end at 88,000. This project here, we can see is going to be over budget by $88,000. So that's really what this number is telling me here. All right, let's keep on going, guys. On your questions, don't forget, know your EVM. I think we have some more. I can't remember. Know your organizational structure. Here's a question on this. In which organization do team members report to both a functional and a project manager? So they're going to be reporting to both a functional and a project manager here, guys. So this one here, you should know pretty easily. This is going to be a matrix organization. So in a functional, they generally report just to that functional manager. Projectize just a project manager. A hybrid is when you use 2 different structures within the same business, but people work for a particular department per se. So in a matrix organization, you have that WBS, I call it, matrix. Weak, balanced, strong matrix. So like, for example, in a balanced matrix, team members are sometimes working with a PM, sometimes they're working with a functional manager on a particular project or on a particular operational task where they share resources. So like a balanced matrix here would have been the best answer. Question 35. Let's keep going here. Question 35 for project tasks. The optimistic time is 8 days. most likely is 10 days, and the pessimistic time is 50 days. What is the expected duration using the PERT formula? So you guys have to know your PERT formula. Notice one for your exam. It's tested on a PMP. It's tested on a CAPM. So what exactly is it? So it is optimistic plus 4 times the realistic or most likely there, plus the pessimistic, divide everything by 6. So in this one here, what are we doing? We're doing 8 plus 4 times 10 plus 50 divided by 6. So we're doing, what is this? 40, 48, 48 plus 50, 98 divided by 6. Okay, so that here is 16.3 days. The closest answer we have is 16 days. They rounded that. So hopefully you guys got that. You have to know your formula. So if you know the formula, the question is not that difficult. All right, now one of the things that you did notice they rounded. Sometimes on the exam they don't round it like that. They may say 16.3 days. There might be another choice with 16.7 days or maybe 17 or something. So be careful with your rounding there. This one I just rounded it to the whole number here. But any which way, the question is to tell you need to know your formula before you walk into that exam room. Question 36, know the formula questions. Let's see if you know your CPI. Given a project with an earned value of 50,000, actual cost of 60, and a planned value of 45, calculate the CPI. So I like this question because it's throwing in some numbers in here that you don't really need, because CPI is equal to, do you know this one? Pause the video, look up the formula. If you don't, is equal to EV divided by AC. So in this one here, we're doing 50,000 divided by AC of 60,000. The answer here, guys, is going to be 0.83. 50,000 divided by 60,000, 0.83 measures the cost. You have to know, once again, how to read this thing. All right, remember how to read this thing. So understand that CPI, if CPI is at 1, you're on budget. Anything under 1, read it as a percentage. You're over budget by that much of a percentage. If you're over 1, you're under budget by that much of a percentage. So if somebody says 0.83, you're 17% over budget. Remember, at 1, you're on budget. Anything under 1, you're over as a percentage. So if you are 1.2, you're 20% under budget. If you're 0.9, you're 10% over budget. So 1 and over is good. All right. Anything under 1 is bad. All right, it says it right there. CPI. A CPI under 1 indicates the project is over budget. All right. Hopefully you guys got that one. Number 37, I got one more formula for you guys. Let's see if you guys can figure this one out. If a project has a critical path of 50 days and the estimated time to complete of a newly added activity on the critical path is 50 days, what is the new length of the critical path, right? So this is not an EVM question. It's a critical path question. It looks complex, doesn't it? So you got a 50-day, you got a critical path of 50 days. If you take an activity that's 5 days in length and you add it to the critical path, and it is a critical path activity, what happens? Did you say it increases the project by that many days? Because if you said that, you're absolutely right. That is correct. You see, if something is on the critical path, represents basically the longest, basically how long the project is going to take. It is the entire duration of the project. Activities, if the activities on the critical path have no slack, and if you add activities to the critical path, it extends the critical path by that many days that those activities are added for. So in this particular one, 50 days, you added 5 days more onto the critical path. The critical path basically increased to 55 days. This tests your knowledge if you understand critical path. Don't be surprised if some of you guys remember when I taught the course, I showed you guys how to calculate critical path. I showed you guys how to do the forward pass, the backwards pass. Don't be surprised if you see those questions on your tests. Question number 38. A construction company is building a bridge based on pre-approved blueprints using well-established method. What delivery method is most suitable? Adaptive, because they can change the blueprint at any time. Predictive, because the methodology and plans are clear. Adaptive, because they're using new materials. Predictive, because they're changing the requirements. Okay, the best answer here is pretty clear. because you don't need an adaptive here. The blueprints are well-established method. You can't really change pre-approved blueprints because then they would need new approvals, because they can't change blueprints. Adaptive, there's nothing here that says what materials they're using, and because they're expecting changes. Once you get a blueprint, especially building a bridge, you shouldn't really expect changes. Best answer, it's a clear methodology, it's a clear plan. This is a good particular project for a predictive or traditional approach. Question 39. Which organizational structure typically allows team members to work on diverse projects while still maintaining their functional roles? So they're working on a diversified set of projects. They're still going to be working on the functional role. Which one is this? Did you say matrix? Similar to the one I had last time. So the functional, they're really working on just functional tasks, really like part-time thing, project management. Project is all project management. I want to emphasize one thing again, that hybrid is really, it's an organization structure where you have departments that are functional and other departments that are projectized. Think of like an R&D department, research and development, being projectized, but then the IT department is all functional. All right, question number 40. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this and you want more questions like this or a bigger diversify of questions to cover all the exam objectives, don't forget to check out my exam simulator, TIAexams.com. All right. Okay, for a construction project, we got PV, 200,000, EV at 210. What is the SPI? All right, so we did do an SPI one before. Let's do one more. Here we go. SPI is equal to EV divided by PV. So in this one here, we got 210 divided by 200. Okay, so this one here, hopefully you guys got this. Remember that, 200,000. So in this one here, you got to remember that if you're dividing numbers, you're not going to get these big whole numbers. So you could have eliminated that right away. And always remember, the top number is bigger than the bottom number. It's going to give you a number over 1. So you can easily tell it was B. Okay, if you know your formula, once again, easy question to get to answer correctly. Now, you do want to make sure you understand how to read this. So let's go over that quickly. SPI, if it's at 1, you're on schedule. If it's 1 and over, you're ahead of schedule by that much of a percentage. So 1.05 means you're 5% ahead of schedule. If it's 0.95, it's not the answer here, but let's say it was, 0.95 means that the project is 5% behind schedule. So remember that for your exam. Don't forget, guys, just don't know the formula. Know what the formula means. Question 41. A potential investor is interested in the long-term vision and features of a new software. What document should the business analyst refer to? Stakeholder register, product roadmap, product backlog, product roadmap, and the business requirement document. All right, make sure you know the definition of something we call the product roadmap. So the product roadmap is a good visualization of the project's strategic directions. It's going to tell you what features are going to get over what period of time. The product roadmap is a bigger thing than just a product backlog. The product backlog is all the features you're going to get in this particular project. But remember, product management is different than project management, right? The product lifecycle includes all the different projects that you're going to be going through in order to develop, build, push out, update, this particular product. So a product roadmap is going to show me all of that. All right, so know the difference. Remember, the product backlog is just the features that you're going to get in a particular project. The product roadmap is going to see all the features, highlight all of its major accomplishments and directions for a particular product. Stakeholder register, listing of all stakeholders. Business requirements document is what needs to get done in order to meet certain business objectives. All right. Next question, 42. All right, guys, we're coming down to an end here. Hopefully you guys got this. A startup wants to develop a new technical product. They have a classic concept, but will need to experiment and adapt their approach based on ongoing. Which of the following delivery methods should we recommend? All right, so we noticed that experiment and adapt. And this here should tell you right away that they're going to be using an agile method. Now, you could have called this adaptive too, right? Adaptive, agile, all the same thing. Waterfall and traditional, this is going to be if they know the work in particular, they know the right kind of work. They've done this work before. The scope is well known. They're not looking for change. Nothing here that says they want to combine traditional with agile methods, making B the best answer. Remember, in agile, you're taking a lot of feedbacks. You're changing all the time. Practice question 43. A project team is about to start the third phase of a predictive project when the client suddenly asks for a change in the design based on the new strategic direction. The change request has not been formally submitted yet. What should the project manager do next? Begin working on a change without formal documentation. Continue with the planned iteration and address the changes later. Request a formal change request. Escalate the issue to the project steering committee. Now, if you remember from what I'm telling you guys in traditional project management, when we cover those 49 processes, you must, before you can start assessing the change, you must get that change request. So B is the best answer. Don't do anything without a change. You can't assess the change unless you get the change request. Don't begin working. You need the formal document. Continue with the plan. First of all, it shouldn't be iterations, all right? I put this in just to make sure you understand that. Plan iteration. Generally on a predictive, you don't have iterations. So definitely it's not this. Escalate the issue to the project. No, don't escalate work unless you need some kind of an approval from the committee. You have to analyze the change first. Making C the best answer. Remember something on a predictive project. Any changes to the work or the project management plan requires a documented, approved changes. Practice question number 44. In a project network diagram, which of the following statement is true about a non-critical activity? So you have to know your network diagram. You have to know your critical path method, or CPM. Okay, so we say things that are non-critical. It has zero float. No. Float is the amount of time you can delay an activity without delaying the project. So, non-critical, that's not true. Critical path activities, they have zero float. It has to have some kind of float. It can be delayed without delaying the project. Yes. Path activities on the critical path, if you delay them, it does delay the project. It's always on a critical path. No, it's not. If its duration can be shortened to reduce the project. No. If you shorten non-critical path duration, it doesn't affect the project end date. A critical path activity, though, if you shorten its duration, will generally decrease the project, making B the best answer in this one. All right, don't forget, make sure you practice your critical path. We did cover that extensively in the class. All right, here we go with some more Tuckman's question. Again, know your Tuckman for your exam. During which stage of the Tuckman model might disagreements or conflict likely arise as the team starts to express their opinions? Foreman, performance, Storman, Norman. The answer here, guys, is of course there's Sturman. All right, if you are having conflicts, they're having some kind of issue on the project. And this generally occurs right after Foreman. So when the team comes together, then they start to have disagreements. Why? Because you see, if you bring a team together, at the beginning, there's no disagreements. So it's not Foreman. When you bring a team together, they don't know each other. They're not going to bad talk and fight with each other. That's Foreman. Performan is when they start doing the work. They're doing the work. They're barely communicating. Norman is when they solve those problems. Storman, this generally happens after Foreman. So after Foreman, they come together. Then they learn about each other. They learn about the work. And then they're like, I think we should do it this way. And then somebody's like, nah, I don't want to do it that way. That's the conflict. So Storman is the best answer here. Question 46. Hopefully you're still with me because we only got 5 more to go. Let's knock them out. They're not that difficult. Okay, here we go. 46. A project is on the verge of scope creep. What can a business analyst contribute to prevent this? Code the features. Well, there's a couple of things, all right? Scope creep and the business analyst. First of all, what is this? Scope creep is when you do more work that's in the scope, when the scope grows and grows and grows. So code the extra feature. Now, a business analyst is not a tech person, so they're not going to be coding. That's the team member. Designing it can also be done by the team. Yes, clearly define and manage a scope because they work with the users to find out what they want. A well-defined scope could mitigate scope creep. Train end users on the system. This is going to be done by a particular trainer. Now, let me explain why. So scope creep is when you have a high-level scope. Let's say the scope says to renovate a room, but it doesn't say that you really just want to paint the wall. Well, if you just put renovate the room, then people can say to change the carpet or add tiles, or put a wall in the room, or to change ceiling, right? Put ceiling tiles instead of sheetrock or something. If the scope is high level, that means that people can ask for a lot of things and it still be within scope. In other words, the work keeps growing, but it's really technically out of scope. So you don't want that. If you have a well-defined scope, this could help mitigate scope creep. All right, best answer is C. Next question. Okay, here we have a PERT formula question. An activity has an optimistic, most likely pessimistic 4, 5, and 10. What is the expected time for this activity? So what is PERT? PERT is equal to optimistic, so we have which is 4, plus 4 times the realistic, so we have 5, or the most likely. So it's going to be 4 times, so it's just 4 times the most likely or realistic, plus the pessimistic, which is 10 days. Divide everything by 6. So what is the answer here? Well, 4 times 5 is 20. 20 plus 10 is 30. 34 divided by 6, 5.67. The closest answer we have here, guys, is 6. Why? Because this is rounded up to 6. It's not rounded down to 5. So you got to be careful with your rounding there, okay? Be careful on your exam on this. Just make sure you know your formula. That's the most important one. Next question, guys, 48. A project team is having many communications issues on the project. This includes using inappropriate language towards each other. What should the project manager suggest in order to solve this problem? This we covered when we were talking about managing the team, developing the team, developing that resource management plan. And particularly one thing that solves especially behavioral issues like inappropriate language is going to be your team charter. This thing sets the ground rules for the team to follow, especially behavioral issues. The resource management plan says how you plan to manage resources, like how you're going to acquire them, how you can develop them, how you're going to manage them. The performance assessment is how you assess the team, individual or team base. Don't put penalties. Anything you have like a penalty system is probably not a good answer. You don't really penalize people. We motivate and work with people. Great. Next question. Question number 49. A city is planning a large infrastructure project that includes building bridges, roads, and public buildings, all of which have various dependencies and varying degrees of complexity. Which of the following project delivery methods should be recommended? Now, this one is complex, okay? Notice they're building bridges, roads, public buildings, all of it, they're various dependencies and a varying degree of complexity. Which of the projects? So these are some things that are very complex. They vary a lot. They have various dependencies. So which one you think is best? So agile allows changes. Adaptive basically is agile. Traditional doesn't allow changes. What do you guys think is the best one here? If it says hybrid, you are correct. Why? Because there's varying changes here. Some things are complex. Maybe some things they've done before. Some things are easy. So when this one says varying degree of complexity, generally things that are complex, haven't been done before, needs to be changed. That's going to fall into your agile camp. If you have things that you've done before, not complex, have been repeated over and over, that's going to fall into your traditional camp, making D the best answer. Practice question number 50 and our last one. Before we get to this, guys, don't forget, if you really want to have much more wider variety of questions or more questions covering all your exam objectives and you really like the way I'm explaining this, hopefully you do. By the way, if you do, please give the video a like. I would really appreciate that. And also subscribe to the channel for more CAPM content. Don't forget, check out TIAexams.com for my simulator that has 7 times as much questions as I'm covering with you in over 5 hours of explanations. Let's get into this. Last question here. You're managing a project that has several sequences of activities, each with known durations, and the resources are abundant and unconstrained. Which technique can you create? This technique can help you create a project schedule by finding the longest duration without considering resources. So if you're looking for the longest duration, and you don't really look, you're not looking at resources, you're looking at activities with duration on it, you're trying to find the longest path through it, then what are we going to look for? If you said critical path method, you are absolutely correct. That's what it is. Monte Carlo simulations are what-if scenarios. Like, what if this happens? How does this affect the schedule? Resource leveling This resource leveling looks at the resources that are working overtime, like one guy doing 2 tasks at the same time, and look for ways to prevent that from happening. It basically levels it out so no one is working overtime or over allocated. Moscow, this is a prioritization method that's used in Agile to prioritize user stories. So best answer here, guys, is going to be B. Okay, guys, that concluded my 50 questions. Hopefully you guys learned a lot from these particular questions. Once again, check out TIAexams.com to find my simulator of more practice questions, but these are going to help you a lot. You're going to find quite a few questions on your exam that are very similar to this types of questions. If you could have gotten an 80% or more on the questions I just did, I think you're on your way to passing. By the way, how much ever you score, put it in the chat box. Let me know how you're doing, how much you scored on it. Put it in the chat box. Let me know how you did and how you like my explanations. Hopefully, once again, you guys found value in this. If you did, please subscribe to the channel once again. Give the video a like, and I'll see you in the next video.